In the previous video, we understood how we are scammed for money using the contrast principle. But what if, right now, this exact same bug in your brain is being used to control your opinion and break your personal life? If in business the contrast principle simply empties your wallet, then in media and politics it does something much more dangerous. It rewires your basic ideas of good and evil. At the state level, this mechanism is used to quietly shift the boundaries of what is permitted. In political science, this process is called the expansion of the Overton window, and contrast is the main engine here. Politicians know perfectly well that society is by nature conservative and always resists harsh reforms. If you roll out an unpopular law or a new tax directly, people will take to the streets in protest. Therefore, strategists break the psychological defense of citizens through a consistent change of background. They create an artificial context against which any wildness begins to seem like a saving straw. For this, media has used the same fail-safe mechanics for centuries, the technology of an artificial catastrophe. It works cynically and simply. First, through controlled media, the most frightening, apocalyptic scenario of events is thrown into the information field. Experts on screens begin to seriously discuss the coming default, a total ban on the internet or the introduction of a curfew. The ordinary citizen, frightened by horrible headlines, freezes in terror and mentally prepares for the worst. Their familiar scale of evaluating normal life instantly goes to hell, and the bar of expectations drops to the very bottom. The brain frantically seeks a way out of the imaginary hell and agrees to anything, just so this nightmare does not happen in reality. And right when the level of panic in society reaches its peak, the government steps onto the stage with a ready-made solution. This solution is objectively bad, harsh, and infringes on your rights. For example, the tax is raised not by 2 times as they frightened in the news, but by just 30%. Or restrictions are introduced, but not total, only partial. What happens in your head at this moment? That exact evolutionary perception bug turns on. Because of the contrast with the recently painted disaster, this predatory law seems to you an act of incredible mercy and care. Society does not protest, but sincerely sighs with relief and rejoices on the principle. Phew, thank God, at least it is not the nightmare that we were promised. You were forced to voluntarily agree to the worsening of your life, but you feel like winners who got off easy. The contrast principle has erased the objective evaluation of reality. What just a month ago you would have called dictatorship and robbery, today you submissively accept as the new normal. Simply because the background behind your back was artificially painted in the colors of the apocalypse. But it is scariest when the contrast principle penetrates under your roof and begins to manage personal relationships. This is the most painful analysis, because in the hands of a skillful manipulator, this perception bug turns into an ideal tool for creating psychological dependence. All so-called emotional swings and hidden domestic abuse are built on this mechanics. The manipulator's goal here is cynical, to artificially lower your bar of normalcy to the very bottom. In a normal state, you would never tolerate disrespect, shouting, or neglect. You would just pack your things and leave. Therefore, the abuser acts more subtly. He breaks your internal evaluation ruler through the contrast mechanics of cold-warm. Imagine that a partner suddenly arranges a week of total, icy ignore, unprovoked scandals, and harsh neglect for you. You walk around the house like on a minefield, feeling guilty for all the sins of the world. Your psyche is exhausted and the background around you becomes absolutely black. You mentally get used to emotional hunger. And right when you are already on the verge of despair, the manipulator sharply changes tactics and turns on warmth. He suddenly begins to talk to you in a normal, calm human tone, smiles, or brings a cheap chocolate bar from the store. Nothing supernatural has happened. This is just a basic, minimal manifestation of adequacy. But in your head, wounded by a week of psychological hell, This contrast produces the effect of an exploding bomb. Usual normal treatment against the background of the recent nightmare seems to you an incredible cosmic happiness and a manifestation of the highest, purest love. You are covered by a powerful wave of dopamine simply because they stopped beating your psyche. The trap has sprung. The contrast with the black background forces you to value the smallest crumbs of attention as a great gift of fate. The manipulator trains you to rejoice that you are simply not being hurt. Your bar of normal relationships is erased. Now you are ready to forgive any abuse just to live through this sweet contrast of salvation after another artificial catastrophe again. Now, when you know how media, business, and toxic people hack your perception, it is time to take the control of your reality back. American society is built on the idea of personal freedom, but you cannot be truly free while your brain blindly reacts to false anchors. To protect your money, time, and nerves, you need a clear, cynical algorithm of 3 hard rules. Rule 1: Object isolation. The first thing to do when you feel that you are being manipulated is to mentally cut off all the surrounding context. Sellers, politicians, and abusers win only when you look at the whole picture within their decorations. Your task is to tear the object out of the background that was carefully created for you and evaluate it in an absolute vacuum. Ask yourself one simple question: would I buy this product, or would I agree to these conditions if they existed on their own? When in a car dealership, after buying a car for $40,000, you are offered a branded key case for $100, do not look at the total amount of the receipt. Imagine that you were just walking through a shopping center, saw this case in a shop window, and it has a price tag of $100 on it. Would you give that kind of money for it? Obviously not. It works exactly the same way in relationships. If your partner, after a week of harsh ignoring, suddenly deigned to speak to you in a normal tone, remove the past week of nightmare from the equation. Evaluate this specific conversation. Is it really a manifestation of great love, or is it just basic, minimal human communication that should be in a couple by default? Isolate the action, erase the false background, and the manipulation will instantly crumble to pieces. Rule 2: Absolute values. The second rule requires training your brain to the hard math of absolute values. Our brain is lazy, it loves to round up and measure everything in percentages or proportions. $100 against the background of buying a house seems like an invisible grain of sand. But the trick is that the purchasing power of this money does not change from the scale of the overall deal. Whether you spend them separately or inside a huge contrast, it is still the exact same money. Start translating any amounts into the equivalent of your personal time. How many hours of hard work do you need to spend to earn these insignificant $100 after all taxes? 2 hours, 5 hours, a day? As soon as you start measuring add-ons and imposed expenses not as a percentage of the cost of a car or a house, but in the days of your real life, the magic of contrast will disappear. $100 for mats is not a trifle for a new car, it is 5 hours of your personal time spent in the office. Respect your labor and do not let someone else's context devalue your resources. Rule 3: The 24-hour pause. The third golden rule against any cognitive distortions is a forced pause. The contrast effect works at the peak of your emotions here and now. Realtors rush you to buy a house, sellers in boutiques keep talking about a sale that ends in an hour, and emotional swings in relationships keep your psyche in constant tension. It is critically important for manipulators that you make a decision before your brain has time to come to its senses. Take it as a hard standard: never sign contracts, agree to conditions, or make major purchases on the same day. Say a simple, "I need to sleep on this thought, I will give an answer tomorrow." American business respects personal boundaries, so this phrase works flawlessly in any situation. In 24 hours, the hormonal storm in your head will subside. Emotions will fade, and the artificial false background that was painted for you in the car dealership or at negotiations will be erased from RAM. Your brain will return its adequate, sober scale of evaluating reality. And when the next day you look at the exact same offer with a clear eye, you will very often be surprised. How could I even agree to this nonsense yesterday? Your perception is the most valuable resource being constantly hunted. When you understand the mechanics of the contrast principle, you begin to see the world without anyone else's filters and decorations. No one else can artificially lower your bar in relationships, make you rejoice in robbery in politics, or silently empty your wallet in business. Do not let manipulators paint the world in their colors to sell you cheap grayness under the guise of pure gold. Evaluate things in absolute. Write in the comments if you have encountered the cold-warm effect in life. Like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell so you do not miss the breakdowns of the next dangerous psychological traps.